So about 2 years ago, whenever I was a junior in high school, something horrible happened to a friend very close to me. We were caught in that awful age of 17 when you're too young to party but old enough to want to. So what results is a smattering of people in someone's basement drinking far beyond the appropriate amount of alcohol. Now this particular night, that's exactly what happened. My friend got roaring drunk. Taking advantage of this, a couple of my other friends decided to play a cruel but otherwise harmless joke on her. There was a dog that was sleeping in the basement, and they told her that she killed it. She believed this without question and started crying and continued to cry for the next 4 hours. My friends found this funny at first, but as you can imagine, they eventually grew annoyed, so they put her to bed, no harm done. There was a boy at that party, a boy who had seen her crying, a boy who knew exactly how drunk she was. And after everybody went back downstairs, he went into the room with her. He texted her the next day. He said, "I know I did something bad last night, and I'm really, really sorry, but let's just keep this between us." So she did. Why shouldn't she? It was her fault, right? She shouldn't have gotten so drunk. She should have worn clothes that were less revealing. She should have yelled for someone or tried harder to push him away because saying no wasn't enough. Her fault. She scrubbed her skin as if that could erase the problem. And she didn't tell a single person, not even me, for months. She kept the secret locked away tight until it became too much for one person to handle. And then she told us one by one, and we were shocked. Shocked that it happened initially, but then shocked that she was somehow blaming herself for it. But my friend's story is not unique. In fact, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network reported these statistics in 2013. Every 2 minutes, someone is sexually assaulted. And of those instances, 38% are by the hands of a friend or acquaintance of the victim. Furthermore, 60% of these cases are not reported to the police, because many times the victim is ashamed about what happened, and, as in the case was my friend, feels like they were to blame. A lot of you might think that this is outrageous. How can a victim be to blame? But the truth is that our society is flooded with rape culture that points fingers at the victim, and media is the broken dam that lets it through. It's time to stop letting media blame the victim. First, a clear definition of rape culture needs to be established and its influence in media. Marshall University defines rape culture as an environment in which sexual violence is normalized and even excused in the media. This is perpetuated through the objectification of another person's body, glamorization of sexual violence, and some examples of this are pressure, specifically on men, to score, or assuming that only promiscuous people are raped. Unfortunately, you can see this a lot, especially in social media. On Twitter, this year, 2013, a tweet was released by a user saying, "Why are women so afraid of rape? You should feel pride that a guy is risking his life in jail just to F you." Unfortunately, this was retweeted hundreds of times. This is rape culture. Also, unfortunately, it happens to leak into the popular media. In 2011, an article in the New York Times discussed an 11-year-old girl who was raped multiple times, and they commented on what she was wearing. This young girl was raped by 18 young men, and the New York Times thought that it would be appropriate to mention that she was dressing older than her age, wearing makeup and fashions appropriate to a woman in her 20s. Likewise, Slate columnist Emily Yoffe recently put forth an article this year, 2013, called "College Women, Stop Getting Drunk," because apparently that's what gets you raped. In the article, she says, as the school year continues, so did the amount of young women being sexually assaulted by their classmates, the common denominator being alcohol, often copious amounts, enough to render the young women incapacitated. So I suppose it never occurred to her that instead of writing an article telling women to stop getting drunk and getting raped, she should write an article telling men to stop drinking and stop raping. Another columnist by the name of Zoe Sabri responded to this article saying that lumping the responsibility on survivors helps rapists justify their actions. I agree, and this cannot continue. So although it's difficult to initiate a global change overnight, there are a lot of smaller steps that you can take towards fixing this larger goal. You personally can take part in preventing victim blaming. Stephen Foster, a journalist, reported that a group of students in Texas used Twitter to combat a sexist speaker that came to their school. The speaker, a Christian extremist by the name of Justin Lookadoo, spoke to the assembly with a very offensive message. One of his points was actually, "Men of God are wild, not domesticated. Dateable guys cannot be tamed." Basically, boys will be boys and we should just accept this. Well, the students of Texas didn't accept this. They went to Twitter, they created an uproar saying, I refuse to enforce gender roles, I refuse to enforce gender stereotypes. And then they used the hashtag, look a douche, based on his last name, look a doo. The trend received so much attention that the principal was forced to issue a formal apology for inviting a speaker to their school. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be challenging these journalists and these reporters. In the 8th edition of the book called Media and Culture, authors Campbell, Martin, and Vagos tell us that we need to be watchdogs of our journalists, critical consumers, and engaged citizens, in order to learn from our past, care about our present, and map mass media's future. In addition, you need to watch yourself and ensure that you're not producing great culture. You can do this by reevaluating what you think is or is not okay. Should you be laughing at that joke? Should you be judging that person for what they're wearing? Furthermore, Marshall University lists specific steps that you can take in order to promote a safe environment. You need to avoid using offensive language that degrades another or their body. Whenever you do have a sexual partner, always communicate with them. Never assume consent. If someone does come to you saying that they have been raped or molested or even harassed, take that claim seriously and be supportive of them. And finally, you need to define yourself. Don't let these stereotypes that exist shape your actions. Society can only move forward if we're willing to make that difference, and it's time to start thinking about making that difference. We live in a world that depends on media, and unfortunately people tend to believe what it produces. It's so important that you don't fall into this trap. I shared with you what rape culture is and what you can do to prevent victim blaming. Start using it today. The Texas students showed us the power of Twitter, and so following their example, I created a Missouri State account on Twitter, SAVB4, Students Against Victim Blaming, and they follow accounts such as the New York Times, the Huffington Post, even the city of Springfield, and will hold them accountable should they make a mistake. I invite you to follow this account, and I challenge you to watch your media intake. Whenever victim blaming crops up, as it inevitably will, challenge that reporter, write a letter, tweet. We cannot continue to let media place blame where it is not due. My friend is still dealing with repercussions from that night 2 years ago. She has a very difficult time trusting people, as you can imagine. And despite her best attempts to convince her otherwise, she still thinks it's her fault. She still thinks she had something to do with it. My best friend was molested and violated, and she thinks it was her fault. She blames herself. Don't let media do the same.